Welcome to another video, family, of the Israelite in Panama. Tonight we're going to be talking about national security and the national security state that has the true Israelites in a tight vice grip of oppression and slavery. More importantly, the exact title is going to be called Esau's National Security State has the true Israelites in a tight vice grip of oppression and suffering. Okay. To begin with, we need to talk about national security, which is the first two words in national security state. So I'm going to read the definition of national security, and then we're going to go into the definition of the national security state. Okay, national security describes the measures taken by a state to ensure its survival and security. The measures are maintenance of armed forces, civil defense measures and emergency preparedness, attempts to create resilience and redundancy in national infrastructure, maintenance of intelligence services to detect threats, and protection of sensitive information. We're going to focus on that last measure, the protection of sensitive information. In the case of the true Israelites, that the sensitive information is the recognition of who the true Israelites are, the so-called Negroes in the United States, okay, and how it affects national security of the United States. Now, I'm going to go into the definition of the national security state. By the way, the national security state is worse than a monarchy, because in a monarchy, monarch can be deposed, but you can't depose the national security state, even though it says in the Constitution that if the governments are tyrannical, the people have a right to abolish that government. But if you try to do that, you'll be branded a terrorist and either killed or thrown in jail. So it goes to show you how Esau, this bloodline, has through their bloodlines in Europe, has taken over the United States through the Federal Reserve and the governments, and this is how they control the true Israelites in the States. So let me go into the definition of national security state now. Just a second, I'm pulling that up right now. Okay, national security state. National security state, or doctrine, generally refers to the ideology and institutions of the CIA, the Department of Defense, or the Pentagon, established by the National Security Act of 1947, an enduring legacy of then President Harry S. Truman, who is a Huguenot, and along with the Dulles brothers, they set up this national security state, with Allen Dulles being later promoted to the head of the CIA by Dwight D. Eisenhower, the president, and his brother, John Foster Dulles, being appointed Secretary of State in the State Department. This would set a precedent, and through this precedent, through the CIA, they would partner with these multinational corporations, forming what President Eisenhower said before he left, beware of the military-industrial complex. It's funny that he's saying beware of the military-industrial complex, but he's the one that helped institute it, because after Truman passed this National Security State Act in '47, he, along with the Dulles brothers, actually helped to set it up and to strengthen it, and to create the situation where these multinational corporations, the CIA and the the government become actually partners in business. So the CIA, the government, is actually owning these corporations, these so-called defense contractors. They're all actually in business with each other, and the money is just circulating around in a circle between the intelligence organizations, the government, and the defense contractors. So this is how they have true Israelites in the Vicegrip. And I'm going to continue giving the definition of national security state. Okay, it says, it was an enduring legacy of then President Harry S. Truman in support of his doctrine to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. Harry S. Truman and the Origins of the National Security State, 1945, 1954, New York, Cambridge University, 1998, which explains the transformative process that ended in the ultimate demise of the New Deal state with its emphasis on social spending and ushered in the militarist national security state. So I'm going to now read some features of the national security state. First characteristic of the national security state is that the military is the highest authority. The second defining feature of a national security state is that the political democracy and democratic elections are viewed with suspicion, contempt, or in terms of political expediency. National security states often maintain an appearance of democracy. However, ultimate power rests with the military or within a broader national security establishment. The third characteristic of national security state is that the military and related sectors wield substantial political and economic power. They do so in the context of an ideology which stresses that freedom and development are possible only when capital is concentrated in the hands of elites. A fourth feature of a national security state is its obsession with enemies. There are enemies of the state everywhere, they say. Defending against external and/or internal enemies becomes a leading preoccupation of the state, a distorting factor in the economy, and a major source of national identity and purpose. A fifth ideological foundation of a national security state is that the enemies of the state are cunning and ruthless. Therefore, any means used to destroy or control these enemies is justified. A sixth characteristic of a national security state is that it restricts public debate and limits popular participation through secrecy or intimidation. Authentic democracy depends on participation of the people. National security states limit such participation in a number of ways. They sow fear and thereby narrow the range of public debate. They restrict and distort information, and they define policies in secret and implement those policies through covert channels and clandestine activities. The state justifies such actions through rhetorical pleas of higher purpose and vague appeals to national security. Finally, the church is expected to mobilize its financial, ideological, and theological resources in service to the national security state. Okay, I'm going to give some final words on this national security state, which holds us in a vice grip. It's very important. Me reading from my notes here. Once again, I like to say a national security state cannot be overthrown, even if it's tyrannical. Tyrannical, okay? According to the Constitution, if you try to overthrow the state, you're branded a terrorist and thrown in jail or killed. Okay, the national security state. It's a type of government structure that characterizes totalitarian regimes. In a republic, which they say the United States is, in a republic, the government's powers are limited, while in a national security state, they are not. I repeat, in a republic, the government's powers are limited, while in a national security state, they are not. A national security state consists of massive, permanent, and ever-growing military establishments, i.e. the Pentagon, which is the Department of Defense, military-industrial complex, etc. A secretive agency with the powers to assassinate, kidnap, detain, and disappear people, i.e. the FBI and CIA, etc. And a surveillance agency with the power to secretly monitor people's activities, i.e. the NSA. In the name of the Cold War, which ended in 1989, and the protection from communism, the national security state totally upended U.S. principles and values. The CIA brought in former Nazis, and they instituted the MK Ultra experiments, which we know who they were experimenting on. The national security state includes regime change operations, and that includes regime changing democratically elected rulers and replace them with military dictators. Federal courts uphold these powers because they are afraid of the national security state. And the national security state is characterized by out-of-control spending and debt, which have accompanied the national security state, threatening the United States with bankruptcy. What's needed is a restoration of limited government and the republic, and to eliminate the national security statism, or the national security state. Okay, all of these things brought together show how the national security state has the true Israelites in a tight vice grip of oppression and suffering. Okay, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, please share the video, and I'll see you in the next video. With that, I'm going to say shalom.